Hello and welcome to part 2 of building the healthiest version of me. First off, thank you for all your support on the first reel and the first video. The second reel has just gone up and I am currently in a hotel room filming the second one because otherwise I am just not going to have time to fit this in. One of the reasons that I wanted to treat this as a sit down chatty style video is so that hopefully there is as little editing as possible. I do say that, but I had to edit out 4 entire minutes of me saying at various points in the last video, so we shall see. I actually almost just said again. What I want to try and cover in this video is my meal prep, my training, specifically what I'm doing power wise, my deadlift PB, and then also the phone call that I had with my coach Callum and what we covered through that call, and then my run, which this week was in Malmo, which is where I am now, which is in Sweden, just over the bridge from Copenhagen. Meal prepping. My nutrition this week, as I quickly mentioned in my caption, I was tracking for 3 days, Monday to Wednesday, and stayed pretty on top of my nutrition, but on holiday it is not something I am fussed about doing. I have definitely enjoyed one too many pastries whilst being out here, but it is completely worth it. So tracking is not at all something I do on holiday, something I recommend clients do on holiday. It's just not worth it. Like, I want everyone to be able to live their lives without constantly tracking food. You probably won't know this about me, but I usually work 11 AM till 9 PM. So both my lunch and my dinner are consumed at work during my gaps. So the easiest way for me to make sure that I am eating within my macros is by meal prepping. I used to meal prep every single Sunday for the entire week. I now have managed to find a way of meal prepping once for the following 2 weeks. So that usually means that I only really need to meal prep twice in a month. My biggest gripe with meal prepping is finding food that is nice reheated. My go-tos tend to be a chili con carne or rice and chicken, because rice is fine reheated. Pasta to an extent, like a bolognese sauce is easily reheated, but every now and then I'll make like a creamy cheesy sauce, which I did actually do in the meal prep this week, and it doesn't always reheat quite as well as eating it fresh. I would say like the diversity / variety of food that you can meal prep, I think, is pretty limited to things that can be frozen and then still taste pretty good once reheated. But for my lifestyle and my work schedule, it is definitely the only way of sticking to my macros and actually making sure I can eat food and afford to eat food, because we're in London, so buying 2 meals a day is definitely not okay for my bank account. So that is my meal prepping. I think the second thing that I wanted to cover around my training was my power section of my warm-up. But first off, if you have not been and seen my 125 kilogram deadlift PB, go and find that reel, go and find that story, and please give it some love. In terms of power training, now there are probably like so many other good descriptive words other than just saying the power section of my warm-up, but that is what it is in my head, and it is only something I've really learned about since joining Third Space, and I make all of my clients do it. So it only makes sense for me to include it in my own training as well. And I have been gradually putting little bits in here and there throughout the last year. And what I mean by this is including various jump series, various plyometrics, and use of the slam ball, for example, to initiate power before my actual training. Training speed or power alongside my actual training has helped massively with my joints, has also helped me understand a little bit better what my body is actually doing. I'm basically prepping my body to move as efficiently and effectively as possible, and I have found, even if it's mentally, that it really helps me understand what I'm doing, feel like I'm doing everything with as much as my body has got to give. And I would really like to go more in depth on that. I have actually considered I might at some point, probably not anytime soon, but do a little series of Ethan teaching me more about power, so that you can kind of see it from me learning perspective, and also because Ethan is an amazing coach when it comes to that, and will probably definitely do a better job than I do at explaining. Okay, cool. So next I am going to go into some more detail about my phone call with Callum, my coach. I obviously said in my last reel that I very rarely speak to him, and it sometimes does mean that I require kind of a catch-up call just to go through absolutely everything as quickly as possible, but just so that he's up to date, because that is how useless I am, and luckily he's super accommodating with that. So we had a quick 30-minute block review phone call on Tuesday, and I explained to him all of the outside stressors in terms of external to my training, just the shit that is going on in my life, and how my training has been this block. So as I mentioned earlier, the last 4 weeks have been super consistent, so we just touched on that. I did mention in my last reel and video that I had recently dropped down to 3 days a week rather than 4, and we actually discussed how that is working a lot better for me than the 4 days a week. And I think I particularly said that one of the biggest reasons for that is my recovery side of things, where I am on my feet all day training clients for pretty long hours, training myself, trying to get in other elements of training. So for example, introducing runs into my week does then make it really difficult for my body to feel recovered. I do sleep well and I do eat well, but sometimes, and I explained it as like my central nervous system just feels pretty depleted, and I'm managing really well with the 3 sessions, and Callum was actually pretty happy with the progress that I have been making even with 3 sessions. So we have actually decided to stick to that, which is nice, and we shall see how we keep going. Oh my god, a pigeon literally is outside the window. Anyway, so that has really thrown me off. When we were talking about external factors, we spoke a lot about comparing yourself, putting pressure on yourself, and managing expectations of your kind of capacity. I think I was saying to him that the people I am surrounded by are in their late 20s, early 30s, and I myself am 23, and I think I struggle to remember that the people I'm surrounded with have years of experience on me. So when I think that they're way further in life, they have a better handle on managing life and knowing what kind of work capacity works for them, all these kind of things that does just take time to learn what works best for you. I then put a lot of pressure on myself not being in that same place, so it feels really difficult sometimes coaching and trying to be as close to an athlete as I can be, whilst there are people on Instagram that look like they're doing it seamlessly. And I then kind of question whether my workload capacity is a hell of a lot lower than all these people that are sharing their average day. And Callum was super reassuring, and we had a really good conversation about how social media is fake. Social media makes it look like people are doing so much more than they are, and so many people don't give themselves credit for what they actually are doing. Callum finished the call by saying, the next time you have an irrational thought about not doing enough, send me that thought and I will tell you it's bullshit, basically. And I just wanted to kind of touch on that here, I guess, because feeling like you're not doing enough and comparing yourself to the people that are seemingly doing the same thing but more of it, or easier, or more efficiently, I think is a huge thing in society now that we have social media. And I know I have touched on this with one of the other girls at work, where people are sharing their morning routine before kind of coaching, and it's like a 10-part series of stuff that they do in the morning. And even just watching things like that, it's like, how on earth do they have time to do X, Y, and Z before going to work? Especially when you then look at our schedules of having kind of 6 to 8 clients a day, and then trying to sleep 8 hours and fit your own training in and doing everything, then very quickly feels overwhelming when you compare yourself to others and think about how others are doing it so much easier. So this is my one note to just say, don't compare yourself to those on social media. Doing what you think is the most important thing for your progress is more important than looking like you're doing everything right in life. And I think my memory card's about to run out. I am going to finish by talking about my run, because I think that's all I have left. But I have been on 2 runs the last 2 weeks. The first run of the week has been an interval, and the second has been a long run, like a straight run without stopping, basically. So my interval, I have been doing 0.5 kilometer walk and then a kilometer run, to total 5 kilometers. So there's 3 kilometers worth of running in there, and the rest is walking. And I think they're probably my favorite. They don't feel too horrendous. And then the second one of the week, so last week was 5 kilometers, this week was 3.5 kilometers, and happened in Sweden this morning. And let me tell you, when the elevation is non-existent, it makes it feel so much nicer. So I checked on my Strava last week the average elevation of several of my friends, and some of them have like 6 meters of elevation. Where I live, 88 meters. Ethan was also coaching me a little bit, which required me to talk and think, which isn't something I'm very good at whilst running, because my only thought is don't stop, keep breathing. So when he's asking me questions and trying to make me think about the technique of my running, it does sometimes feel a bit much, but it is also exactly what I've asked him to do, so I can't really complain. But his kind of pointers are super helpful. So we looked at a little bit of technique today, worked on my breathing a little bit, and ran 3.5k straight. Now this is where my rant about DPD, the delivery service, I am going to try my absolute best to not go into, but I have no idea on the heart rate of my last 2 runs because my watch broke, but I have a new one on the way. I ordered it on Monday. I had next day delivery for Tuesday. The delivery driver did all sorts, but ultimately sent me a sorry we missed you to a house 3 doors down. So yeah, I didn't get my watch. When I tell you, Apple absolutely has us wrapped around their little finger, addicted to closing my ring and checking my heart rate and my sleep and whatever else on my wrist, the hat's off to them. The point of my little rant about Apple and DPD is that my main purpose of running, which I mentioned in my last video, is to track my heart rate, and I have not been able to do that without my watch. So I have just been looking at my pace of my run, focusing on how I feel whilst I'm running, and ultimately comparing my elevation gains. But all in all, has been a super good week of training. I think that is all I have to say. I, again, just want to say a super huge thank you to everyone's support. If you would be ever so kind as to give it a thumbs up, add a little comment. If you want to put in questions in the comments, that would be the best way to use the comments, to be honest. I am hoping to gradually build enough traction that people do want to ask questions, and then I can filter in a little bit of time at the end of these videos to answer those questions. So if you do have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I will see you next week back in my own flat, but I hope you have enjoyed the little backdrop and enjoyed listening to me ramble on once again. Have a great week.